Hi everyone, I'm Yelena. I'm from the marketing team at Come On, and I'm here today with Eric Lang. How are you, Eric?
I'm great, Helena. How are you guys all out there?
Well, I'm at the office. I see you have the very first Ankh prototype to show us today, right?
That's right. Yep, I'm here in my brand new apartment in Toronto. So new that we haven't even moved all our stuff in. Unfortunately, thanks to the recent issues, our stuff is in transit and we can't get it for a little while. So pardon my blank game shelf. They'll be full of great games later.
Oh yeah, lots of games to play. But today we're talking about Ankh. We're entering the last week of the campaign. Have you been following on that? How do you feel about that?
I mean, it's good. Of course, every Kickstarter campaign makes me nervous, right? We're doing a big thing, and I hope we do it. I'm hoping we do it very well. I'm very pleased at the reactions that we've been getting. I know it's difficult times, and we appreciate every backer, especially during times like this. I've been following the comments and reading the questions with you, so I'm glad that we have this opportunity to start to clarify a few things about the game and talk a little bit behind the scenes about the design process.
Yeah. So I think we start with not exactly a gameplay, but some of the cool moments you get in the game, and then we move to question and answer. Is that okay?
Yeah, sounds great.
Okay. So what do you have for us? I can see Osiris. I can
Well,
see a
yeah.
moon.
So I've set up a prototype here. This is what I've been using like these are real plastic components and the developer copies. So not obviously not as polished and nice as our real ones, but I've real graphic design, final graphic design on of the god sheets, of the cards, and unfortunately I didn't get the token, so I'm using my little cubes, developer improvisation. And I've got a setup here to show you examples of some conflict a little later. I guess we would like to look through the God board here, right?
Yes. Let me put
Right.
you in full screen so everyone can see.
Absolutely. You guys see all that? There you go. So like the I guess the point here is that we don't want to just like reiterate the rule book, right? The rule book's on the Kickstarter. You can read that, but I'd like to walk you through a little bit of like a little behind the scenes, like what these powers are and why we made them this way, and what kind of things you'll be thinking about during the game, right? And so whenever I demo the game during a play test or a demo, and I explain the game, it's always centered on the god. This is you, right? In fact, this is you being Ra. Um, and every god is defined by two parts. They're defined by their unique god ability, which has a big game-breaking effect, and they also have the Ankh powers, which are the same. I know some people ask, like, why are the Ankh powers the same among all the gods? Because we played with many different versions. The Ankh powers being all the same actually makes the game a lot more strategic, so that you know what to plan around, rather than because there are 12 unique powers that all work together and synergize with each other in different ways. And so I want to make sure that you can look at other people's boards to see how they are advancing as their god and relate it to what you're doing as well, because there's a lot of other stuff going on in the game. We didn't want to make the game so overloaded with powers that it was essentially random. You actually have to play around everybody's powers. They're divided into 3 different levels, of course, as they progress along the game. Level 1 powers, level 2, level 3. And there actually is a bit of an identity between the 3 powers, which sort of reflects the cadence of the game. So early in the game, as people unlock powers, you have your follower-based Ankh powers. Because Ankh is, at its core, even though it has a monsters and area control game, there's a bit of an engine quality to it. Right, so your followers, the people that you're going to use to build monuments for yourself and to unlock more Ankh powers for yourself and to protect yourself from plague, you need to generate those in the basic game by going to monuments and using the gain followers action. There are other ways to get followers, and you'll be able to choose 2 or 4 of these. Right, so you can be commanding, which if you think you can win battles through majority, you can get 3 extra followers, right? But a lot of followers, but you have to be able to win battles. You can be inspiring, which doesn't actually give you followers, but it gives you a discount on monuments. Monuments are a really good way to get devotion. So and they can get very expensive the more you build. So having a cost of max of 3 is important. Bountiful is the one that will trip players up the most, I think, because it references a later part of the game. It gives you double power whenever you play a flood card. We'll talk about that during conflict. But if you need to, you're not going to win every conflict, right? And just like the other 2 games in the series, this game is not always about winning battle through raw numbers. It's about what do you want to get out of every individual battle. Flood is one of those. You can use a flood to go, you know what, I'm either going to get greedy and try to get more followers out of this, or I'm going to just send people in, sacrifice them for followers so I can advance better in other parts of the game. Bountiful lets you double that. Of course, it telegraphs that, so if people know you're bountiful, you have a much better chance of playing Flood when it comes up. Revered, of course, just gives you the basic bonus of whenever you use the gain monuments action, gain extra followers. It's reliable. There's no way for anybody else to stop it, but of course, it gives you the least amount of followers, slow and steady. The middle ones are about monument attunements. So in the game, of course, monuments are a big part of it. You have to build monuments. In conflict, you have to take control of them through events, and they give you devotion based on majorities inside every region. Not only are they different in the sense that temples, obelisks, and pyramids are scored separately, they also have potential unique powers that you can get into. So that's how you get to attune. This is one of my favorite parts of the game because we get to have these 3 cool different types of monuments that don't complicate the game at the beginning. They complicate it around the middle once you're used to the strategic landscape of the game. So the first power, of course, is glorious. That's if, you know what, I'm not going to worry about monuments. I'm just going to go all in on battles. You get, if you win a battle by 2 or more strength, you get an extra devotion. The other 3 cover the monuments. So, and there are basically 3 different ways of either directly or indirectly gaining devotion. So we start to transition into the devotion part of the game. Obelisks let you teleport around the map from conflict to conflict, which is extremely useful. You'll see why in a minute. Temple Attuned, of course, gives you extra raw power, and every time I summon, I get to put more figures into play as long as I control temples. And of course, sorry, I was saying pyramid. I read it in the wrong order. That's pyramid. That's pyramids. The Temple Attuned is to make your god itself strong. The more temples there are to your god itself becomes powerful. Which every figure in the game is one power, but when you if you decide to put most of that into your god is indestructible, can never die in battle. So of course it's good to have that, but he's concentrated on one figure. So do you want to try to spread out, win lots of battles, or do you want to really try to guarantee to win one? That's the thinking there. And of course, at the end, the Ankh powers are about the end game of your devotion engine, right? So Mighty lets you even double up on battles, so you can gain an extra devotion and your opponents lose a devotion if you win by 2 strength, and that stacks. So if you have Glorious and Mighty, you really are all in on battles. I promise you're not going to win every battle. It's impossible. So pick your battles. Pick your battles and pick your strategy. Worshipful, of course. After your turn's last action, if you control at least 5 monuments, you gain a devotion every turn. So if you spent a lot to put the monuments into play or to capture them, then you'll just get devotion. Resplendent, of course. Resplendent gives your monuments strength in combat. So your monuments count like they are figures, which is really good. If you have a lot of monuments, of course, they're not movable. So if you are deciding near the end of the game that there are specific regions that you want to win, then that's what you're going to go into. And of course, Splendiferous, if you, at your turn's last action, if you have at least 10 followers, gain 1 devotion. Now that means 10 unused followers. That means if you're going to stockpile some followers, you can gain devotion by holding on to them, but you don't get to use them while you're, if you want to get this devotion turn after turn. That all adds up. So that gives you an example of how you can build individually. And of course, your god tells you the other half of the game. It doesn't always tell you how to win devotion, but it tells you how you're going to play the game, and it gives you some different strategic angles. So Ra it loves illuminating areas and their warriors. So Ra has 3 illumination tokens that you can affix to your figures when you summon them. So when you decide to summon, you can decide, all right, this one's going to be radiant. And if I win, I'm going to get an extra devotion for that. Everybody can see. So you are telegraphing that you're going to go in on that battle. So if you are all in on those type of battles, you can actually pair that up with maybe mighty or glorious, and you can get lots of glory from lots of devotion from one battle. And of course, if your figure's killed, it comes back here. So it's not a huge risk, but it's something that only Ra and only Ra can do. Other gods like Osiris, my favorite god, because I'm not the greatest at winning battles right away. Osiris, who's been betrayed, every time he loses a battle, he gets to put a underworld token anywhere in the region that he died. Not only does that stop other people from entering that space, but it also gives you extra spaces to summon an extra warrior. So you get an advantage later on in the game. Now, I've heard some of our playtesters compare this to Loki from Blood Rage. I wouldn't. It's not the same. It is its own thing, right? You can't lose all the time. You do have to win some battles. It's about losing in preparation for winning other places. So just be careful. Don't make the comparison too quickly. Amun, of course, is a conflict-only god, so we'll talk about him a little later. He gets to use extra cards in conflict. Isis is amazing because her warriors are protected. They can't die as long as they're next to other warriors. So timing matters a lot for her. If you can stick your warriors next to others, you can lose and not die, which is super powerful, especially in the mid game when positioning becomes more of an issue. And of course, Anubis, who has a really cool passive power. As long as there's a lot of battles going on and people are dying, they get to capture warriors and become stronger themselves. So the gods were designed not only to be give you a direction, but also give you direction to who to play against. It really matters whether Osiris is in a game or not, because that's two different flavors of game. That's the short version.
So you walked us through every power, but a player cannot get all of them in a single game, right? You have to choose.
Yeah. Good point. Of course, yeah. So I mean, that's the whole point of the game. So you see that there's only 2 segments on each Ankh power. You can only unlock a maximum of 2 of the 4 of each. So you have to either plan. You can come to the table with the game plan and go all right, I plan on synergizing these powers, but you are going to have to be reactionary as well, right? If you see 2 other players that are going all in on mighty, then you know that they're telegraphing they're going to start winning on battles a lot. Maybe you want to pivot a little bit, concentrate on monument majorities or monument or proliferation in monuments, or even just concentrate on maybe I want to find an easier way to get followers in combat. So yeah, you absolutely. You want them all. Of course you want all 4 of them, but you have to choose 2. And the timing of when you choose them, as well as who you're reacting to, is a big, big part of the game.
Okay, so now that we know a bit more about how the gods work and their powers, can you show us some combat?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's Ankh, right? What is a game in this series without some conflict? So let's see. I'm going to go to my board here. How's that? There we go. There we go. We're missing space over here and some space over here. So I'm just going to walk you quickly through a conflict. Let's say that this is the second conflict in the game. So as you can see, this is I had to print a new version of this because I was using an older version. The game goes through an event track, right? As you'll be claiming monuments and having conflicts. I'm simulating approximately what the board might look like if you were at if in a 3-player game, if you were at the second conflict. I'm being a little generous and saying that there wasn't quite as much carnage in the first one, just to show you maximum possibilities here. So as you know, there are 3 gods here, by the way. There's Ra over here in the orange, right? There's Osiris over here, and there's Amun over here. Remember that Ra gets to have radiant figures. Osiris is okay with losing every once in a while, and Amun gets to use 2 cards at once. Everybody has 6 cards the same 6 cards that you can use in a conflict. And I'll walk you through these in a little bit more detail as we get through conflict. But here's the important thing. You are going to go through, there's 5 regions in this particular scenario. One of which was divided before now. So we're going to resolve them in order. So first region 1, then region 2, region 3, region 4, region 5. The cards that everybody has to play are open. You know what everybody has access to because once you've played a card and it's discarded open in front of you. So it's easy to tell. You can always just ask players, what cards do you have access to? It's not about trying to remember. It's about the mind games. So in this scenario, we'll just do right away. We'll do region number 1. Region number 1, only Ra has presence here. So what Ra will do is he just wins. There's no, you do not get to play cards, even if you wanted to. You cannot play cards. So Ra will win, and they will get 1 devotion. You can see on the track here, I put everybody on an approximate devotion counting. I will just move Ra up 1 devotion. That's it. Now, if Ra had any of these monuments, you would get extra devotion, but he does not. I put Ankh tokens on every monument here that's owned. So we now move to number 2. Number 2 is a 3-way battle. Ra and Amun and Osiris are there. Ra's god is there. Osiris has 1 strength, and Osiris has 1 strength, and Amun has 1 strength. So, Elena, why don't you play with me here a little bit? So let's say we'll put you in the position of Osiris. Ra is a god. He has 1 strength. He is not going to lose. There's no, there are no monuments here. So nobody has control of any of these monuments. So it's a matter of like, not only, remember the key to this game, it's not always about, can I win this conflict now? If that's all you care about, you're going to lose because you have to think a little bit ahead. Do you feel like, since it's only the 2nd conflict and nobody's played any cards, how confident are you that you can win? What are your options? I'll walk you through them real quick. Right.
Can you move the camera a little bit so I can see who I'm against?
You bet you can. There you are.
Okay, so I'm Osiris. I'm against Ra and a Moon Warrior.
That's right.
Everyone has just 1 strength.
Everybody has 1 strength. Now, Ra's strength is a god, so he's not going to die no matter what. So even if he loses, he's not going to die. So the options that you can play, right? You can play, and unfortunately, I'm sorry that the titles are gone here. You can play, there are 2 sections of your card. There's a strength that'll add to your strength, and there's an effect. So Plague, if you play Plague, Plague supersedes all other cards, and you actually get to, everybody will have to bid followers secretly, and whoever bids the most is immune to Plague, but everybody else already kills everybody. So that happens before anything else. So that might even obviate the need for a battle. So even if you are way high in strength, make sure you have followers to be able to survive that. So that's the first one. The second one, of course, is there's Miracle. Miracle, if you believe you're going to lose, you can call for a miracle and then you'll lose and you gain a devotion for every one of your figures that died. So even if you lose, you've got an option. Now, now if you want to try for an advantage, over here there's Drought. Drought puts a focus on the desert. So only the toughest will survive. So Drought gives a +2 bonus already, and it makes all the tough survivors in the desert regions an extra, it actually doubles their strength. So right now, everybody's in the desert here. So if you played Drought, you would get 2 and 2. They'll give you 4 versus their 1. Unless they played Drought as well, you would probably win that combat. Now there's also, now we'll put that aside. Let's say, all right, I'm not going to focus on winning this combat. I want something else out of that combat. You can play Flood. If you play Flood, each one of your warriors that is in a fertile space, which is a green space, will get you a follower. And remember, as I said before, if you had Bountiful, and let's say you did, you would get double that. Now, unfortunately, nobody's sitting here in the lush spaces, so you're probably not going to use that. We can eliminate that safely. And finally, of course, there is the Build Monument card. Now, one of the things that you get to do in the game on the event track, as the rules tell you, you can try to capture monuments as the monument event comes up. Even if you don't get those, you can use build monument right in the middle of a conflict to build a new one to try to get extra devotion out of that. Monuments have a very high cost. They cost you followers equal to the number of monuments of that type you already have doubled. Sorry, that you were going to have doubled. So let's say, for example, Ra, you have 2 obelisks already in play. If you wanted to build an obelisk, it would cost you 2, 4, 6 followers, right? Unless you had inspiring, which would make you cost a maximum of 3. You didn't. You used it on bountiful. So maybe this is not your fight. If you want to get this this pyramid or this temple, you have none of those, so they'd only cost you 2 followers each. We'll say, for sake of argument, you have 4 followers onto the side. Ra has 1 follower, and Amun has 3.
Okay, so I can see I will be involved in 2 more conflicts in the same turn.
That's right. That's right. So this one's easy for you. Region number 4 is easy because you have no competition. So you're just going to gain this one. That's good. But yeah, you are up against all of these, and you're outnumbered out here. And you're fertile out here.
Okay, so I may want to spare my miracle card for the more difficult combat and use drought now.
That's
How
a good.
about that?
So drought's good. All right, so you're going to plan to win now. Now I'm going to get into the headspace of. Now, of course, we don't know that you're playing that. Everybody reveals their cards simultaneously. So let's say Amun. Amun has a slightly. Amun has a special ability. He can play once per combat. He can choose to play 2 cards and execute both of them, adding their strengths together and getting both effects. Now, Amun has a combat up here and an even combat over here, so he's not going to do that. He has to declare that before anybody else makes their choices. And finally, Osiris. Osiris is secretly like, I'm okay with losing. So Osiris is going to play a card, and Amun is going to play a single card. Amun, we reveal the cards together. You play Drought. Looks like you're going to crush unless somebody else does. If somebody else plays, we all tie. Nobody wins. Everybody dies, but you don't. Amun is going to play. Amun is going to play Build a Monument. Amun's going to use all of their followers to build a monument. Now, they already have an obelisk and they have a temple out here in play. So either they're going to take this pyramid and it will cost them only 2 followers, or they can maybe try for this obelisk, which will cost them 4 followers. Now, this is the thing, right? This is what I can't stress this enough, right? The game of Ankh is you got to zoom in, you got to zoom out, zoom in, zoom out. Right now, at this very moment, it might be the best play for Amun to go, you know what? I'm just going to take the temple because it costs me the least followers. But since you already have an obelisk and you already have a pyramid, are you thinking ahead? Do you want what do you want to specialize in? Do you want to, if you want to be temple attuned, maybe it's worth it to spend all those followers in that temple, and then when you're over here already, Amun will be worth. Well, not in this conflict, but in future conflicts, he'll be worth an extra 2 strength all the time. I'm going to say, having played the game a few times, Amun is actually going to get the obelisk and use all 4 of their followers. We're going to go over here. We're going to build a brand new obelisk. Which I'm terribly sorry, everyone. I lost my obelisk piece. So. So I will build an obelisk there. Welcome to Development 101, Improvise. I would build it. Now you can build it anywhere you want. Now where you build the monuments is important too. If I feel like I'm going to keep this guy here, now he's going to die. He knows that because you're going to win. I want to put it where I can have my people next to in the future, so that I'm able to so I'm able to use that for the gain followers action. So every space is important, even if it doesn't look like it at first. So I know I'm going to die, so I'm going to put it up here so I can have it in closest vicinity to my temple. So it'll be easy for me to summon and move to there for later. So Amun does that. He's going to, Osiris is going to lose, plays a miracle, gains a devotion. You win with your drought. These 2 are toast. If Anubis was in play, he could capture one of those two and get bigger. He's not in play, so we don't have to worry about that. So now, before the battle's over, I should say, Amun is actually going to win a devotion because he has more obelisks than any other player. Goes up one, and then toast. And Osiris is going to get a devotion because he gained from his miracle. And of course, since Osiris lost, he's going to get to put an underworld token here. And he is not a fan of you specifically because you beat him. So I'm going to put this. I'm going to put this face down because it's an old graphic. I'm going to put this face down token right here because Osiris thinks he's not going to win either one of these. So I'm going to make it really hard for you. This is the only space where you can put a single figure to get the benefit out of both. Or if I do want to win this as Osiris, I can put this here and actually win and be able to summon somebody here and boom, instantly close to both of them. It's nice to have options. So that's reach number 2. You won, so you got your, oh yeah, sorry, you got your devotion for winning. That's what you were going to say, wasn't it? I almost cheated you out of devotion.
Yeah. And how about our viewers control the next combat, choose the next cards?
Woo! All right. So the next one is who should they be? Amun or Osiris? We're going to do number 3 right now. Amun already has. What
do you guys think? You want to be Amun? I don't know. I guess you get to pick Amun. Okay.
Okay, they're going to be Amun. Okay, they're going to be Amun. So Amun is over here and Osiris over here. So I'll be Osiris. As Osiris, I'm okay with losing. I think. So Osiris has already used a miracle. You know that Osiris is not going to be able to use that miracle card. Amun is over here. No, Amun has already used build monument. You cannot build another monument. So if the I'll just walk you through just so for sake of expediency, right? What the good options might be. Right now, Osiris might actually play a flood because he's sitting here in a fertile area, so that'll get an extra follower if he thinks he can win. Or he might consider a drought. Both of them have a figure here. If he doesn't think Amun will play a drought, that'll make him actually win the combat. Me being a slightly defensive player, I'm actually willing to lose here. I would actually, as Osiris, build a monument, and I'd probably build a monument here or here. And for sake of expediency, we'll say that Osiris played a flood. Played a build monument. And Amun played actually played a drought because Amun really wanted to win, and used his power to play Cycle of Mot, which is the last card, which I'm looking for. The last card, Cycle of Mot, is the card I didn't tell you about, which lets you. It does nothing, but it lets you cycle through all of your cards. Lets you take all of your discarded cards back into your hand. It's another strategic part of Ankh. Like once per cycle here, once you've played a card, it's gone. So at some point you're going to have to choose a conflict, a battle, do nothing, play Cycle of Mot, and get all your cards back. Amun has that cool power to do it twice, so he's going to play. He will play a drought and a Cycle of Mot, get both of his cards back. He'll win. Osiris will build his monument. Say builds a temple over here, takes control of it. And Amun gains a temple victory, a devotion, and actually a devotion for winning.
Eric, I can see a couple of comments asking about what happens in the event of a tie.
Good question. If there's a tie, after all is said and done, nobody wins. Everybody dies. And this is also important to notice the difference between a god and a warrior. Warriors, of course, die if they lose in combat. A god, even if they lose, they don't die. So you can lose a combat, you can even lose a plague, and you're still there. Sorry, you had another question?
No, I guess that's it. And then there's a final conflict, which
right.
is actually not a conflict.
There's a final conflict. So there's a number 4 conflict over here, which Ra gets to win. We'll say that Ra wins because he wins in dominance because there's nobody else there. So he gets a devotion, and he has more obelisks than anybody else. So he's going to gain 2 for his obelisks. Now, in here, Amun has a temple, but he doesn't have a figure there. You need to have a figure. You need to be participating in that conflict. He doesn't have a figure there, so he actually cannot win that monument devotion. So even you cannot just build monuments and not commit anybody. If you want the devotion, you at least have to participate. And finally, the last conflict over here. This is a big conflict, and I know that because we're live streaming. There's a lot going on. I try to not overwhelm everybody with info here. You'd be keeping normally you'd be keeping track of what everybody's played. Remember, your discard piles are open. Your options are clear. This is the last conflict of them all. So I'll give you some quick pointers here. Everything in region 5 is on fertile ground, so nobody's going to play a drought. There's no desert. Amun does not build a monument. Osiris has, and Ra has. So they're not going to play that. Somebody might be tempted. Osiris might be tempted to play Cycle of Ma'at because he's winning. He's tied for win. But if he loses, he only loses 1 warrior. So maybe he wants to get all of his cards back for later. Of course, this is a great opportunity to play Flood. This is the point where, as we in development say, do you want to be greedy? If you think you might win or tie anyway, maybe you'll just get followers out of this. Now, my recommendation in this particular case, right, is that Ra is just he's probably going to lose. So he might just go, I'm going to play Miracle, get out of here, or play Cycle of Ma'at and lose his person. It's fine. Amun has already used his 2 cards, so he only gets 1. Amun might just play Flood. That's that. And of course, Osiris over here. Normally, Osiris doesn't mind losing, but of course, you can double bluff that and say, I'm going to do that anyway. Now, remember I said drought augments only the people in the desert, but it does give a base combat strength of +2, as does plague. So if he played drought, which he did, he actually wins off of the combat strength. So Moon goes away, but before that, he will still get his monument bonus. Now, understood, this is a lot, right? We covered a lot of ground, right? It's Ankh has one thing I'm most proud of. The game has a lot of simple rules, but there are a lot of ramifications, and it is a perpetual struggle between like what I need to get accomplished right now and what I need to get accomplished in medium term and what I need to get accomplished long term.
Okay, so I guess before we move to the questions, could you just really quickly show us what would happen if 2 players were to merge right now, if that was the point in the game where the merge happens?
Oh yeah, of course. So of course, merging is fun. So let's say in this particular situation, right? Let's say after this conflict was done, we look at the devotion track, which I'm going to move over to the camera. Can you see that? There you go.
Yeah.
So in this particular case, the two bottom gods would merge. So Osiris would merge with Ra. Now, what happened is the lower god the lower god will actually lose all of their figures. So Osiris and Ra become 1. You remove all of Osiris's figures from the board. You remove all of their monuments, Ankh tokens. The monuments stay, but their Ankh tokens go away. They merge into Ra. And so Ra's devotion moves down to Osiris. So this is now treated as a single god, 1 devotion. They do move to the bottom god. But they're going to get a pretty big power boost. So Ra and Osiris. So Ra's Ankh powers, since Ra was the dominant god in that case, Osiris's Ankh powers will now match Ra's. So both of your gods will have the same Ankh powers. And anytime your future merged gods gain an Ankh power, both of you get it. Now both players, both Osiris and Ra, are going to control this god and their warriors. So So the player keeps their seat at the table in the same seating order. On that player's, on the formerly Osiris's player turn, they are going to control Osiris Ra, which means they're going to take their 2 actions, either move, summon figures, gain Ankh powers, or unlock an Ankh power, or gain followers. They're going to do that twice, possibly triggering events. And then on the Osiris's player, they're going to control Osiris Ra, doing their 2 actions. So yeah, they're way behind in devotion with the possibility of getting eliminated in the second last conflict, but their power level boosted quite a bit. So this looks like a gap. It's not that big of a gap. This player is now playing against, it's not exactly 2 players, but it's a very strongly boosted god. So part of this, part of the dynamic I really like here, right, is that you get to, there's a lot of coordination required, because even in the conflict, like who you merge with matters as much as who's the dominant god and who isn't. It matters. So you actually might get people like figuring out, like early on in that conflict, looking at the devotion track. All right, I think I'm going to merge with you. I think it's better that I be the dominant one. So don't try too hard to get devotion here, here, here. Of course, that leaves wide open for like some classic prisoner's dilemma game theory, right? Where you can be like, all right, sure, I'll happily do that. And then you just go ahead and win, and you can, because you're taking advantage of them not necessarily playing their best. Being merged, I promise you, is a big power boost. So like you are by no means out of the game. The win rate between merge and non-merge is pretty close to 50-50. They do get, well, I don't say quite 50-50, but it's close, right? Depending on the player count. And the scenarios that we design are actually designed with player count in mind, which includes merge. So we want to give opportunities for devotion as for either combined or single gods as the player count dictates. The followers are merged, both players. So both players share the same pool of followers. So if I gain followers, it goes in the pool for both of us. And if you gain, they're shared for both of us.
You beat me to it. I was going to read that question to you. In fact, there are a lot of questions showing right now that we will cover in our Q&A session. So maybe we can start that? Sure,
I'm ready.
Okay, so we collected the questions across platforms, some from Kickstarter, some from Facebook, some from Instagram, and let's begin with the first one. From Kickstarter, Geared. I'm sure to be mispronouncing that. Anyway, you have stated that sometimes games go through several iterations before you bring them to the market. At what point did you feel that this iteration was the one? What mechanic or concept in Ankh, as we know it now, is your I love it mechanic?
So yeah, it's a great question. I mean, so it's not sometimes, every game goes through lots of iterations, every game. And these mythic games, as much or more than ever. So Ankh has gone through, at least, I would say at least 10 or 11 significantly different iterations. It was always Egypt. It was always on a map a lot like this. It was always about the gods. I always know, like, I've been doing this for a long time, for 20 years. So there's not always a specific thing or specific moment that I know, oh, because of this mix of mechanics, I know this is the right one. It's always a sense of feel. I go to the table, I watch people play, they immediately want to play again. They talk about the game, they get obsessed with the game, they complain about the things I want them to complain about. They obsess over it the way that I'm obsessed over it. And we start making fewer and fewer changes. Now, I mean, the game right now as we speak, is still in development. We're not changing the core rules of the game at all. We might make some tiny little adjustments over time. But the I love it mechanic, of course, in this game was the things that never change. The way the actions work. There's 4 actions in the game, but that's really all you have to teach somebody to start playing. But every action has such weight on it, right? Because you want to do what's good for you right now in this very moment, but also weigh that against what event you may or may not want to trigger, which players you want to set up for the future event, and do you really need that event? Do you really need to be in control of that event, or do you really want the extra action? Those are tough choices that I want players to be constantly making. The merge is Egypt. I mean, that's the big thing about Egyptian mythology, right? That Amun-Ra is the joint god of Amun and Ra. Like, this is the mythology where I got to do something that I haven't seen in games like this before, where in the middle of the game, you get to characteristically change the game into a co-op versus with a co-op element inside a classic competitive game. The type of interactions, the type of like spoken interaction and player interactions are just different in this game than they are in Blood Rage and Rising Sun and other area control games. So we just basically massage the game around that to make sure that it works, that it offers something fresh and new, and is still balanced. And of course, balance is the hard part. That's what takes months and months and months.
Okay, so to the next question. In what ways is Ankh similar to Rising Sun and or Blood Rage? Or in what ways will it feel familiar to players familiar with its predecessors? Those are, well, very popular games, and I'm sure people want to know in which ways Ankh is different, but also they want to know in which ways it is familiar.
Sure. So, I mean, we'll start with similar, because that's actually the lower part. So, I mean, this Mythic series is based on gods, monsters, and warriors, right? Area control and combats where winning is not the only thing that matters. It's about, yes, of course, winning is good, but it's also about what do you want to get out of the combat besides just winning. And sometimes having to make that tough choice and having to discern whether your opponent wants to win or what they want out of it. So those are the common elements. But other than that, they're all very different. I mean, hopefully, as you saw from this example, even though Ankh has conflicts like the other two games do, they play out differently because it's actually a slightly more streamlined set of rules, but there are more ramifications to every micro decision. The Ankh is a game that actually has a little bit less surface complexity than Rising Sun and Blood Rage, in the sense that there aren't a million different special effects going on all the time that you have to keep track of. The depth comes out of the tactical and strategic nature of the rule set. So I want to go as far as I can to make a simple game, a game with simple rules, but very, very deep ramifications to every decision that you make. Now, of course, no game would be complete without like having cool monsters that change the game, which is the same as Rising Sun and Blood Rage, and cool special abilities for the gods themselves. And the last point is scenarios. Scenarios is having it. I realized early on in design and development here that the game needed to have fixed setups so we could optimize it for different player counts to give every player a good range of decisions, and also to make every different player count have its own feel from a developer point of view. So we get to sort of control the experience for different player counts to make sure that they still feel like Ankh in every way. Of course, except for a two-player game where there's no merge, but the two-player game actually feels more like just an all-out war, but we actually get to optimize the board and even tweak the basic rules to really make that, to really flesh that out. So that's different from the other two games. I'm sorry, Helena, you're muted.
Sorry, okay. I have another question that actually is related to what we're saying right now about the monsters. What was the idea behind limiting the number of guardians and make it a race to obtain them? Because that's different from both the predecessors.
That's right. So, we went through a lot of versions in this, right? And I hit on this about, I don't know, midway through the design, that we knew we want monsters in this. This is not a Mythic game without cool monsters and different abilities. I wanted to do a slightly different set of choices. So in Blood Rage and Rising Sun, whenever you choose to take a monster, you're choosing to take that monster instead of something else: a battle card, a quest card, a path, an honor card, a virtue in Rising Sun. You're weighing that decision against something else. So what I wanted to do in this game was to say, you know what, in this game, it's the choice to whether prioritize getting a monster rather than what else directly are you going to choose. So if you want to make sure that you get one of the monsters that's in this game, in this particular game, you have to prioritize getting Ankh powers. By doing that, you are sacrificing other parts of the game, right? You're sacrificing other parts of the game, like usually board presence, right? And you're sacrificing followers that you get to use in conflicts. So it does matter. So everybody wants Ankh powers, but and of course you sacrifice reactivity. That's a big one. That's a subtle one, but it's a big one. If you want to race ahead to get Ankh powers for everybody else, then you pick them, and then everybody else gets to see what you take, and then they get to react appropriately. That doesn't seem like a lot, but when after you played the game even once, you probably get to notice that pretty fast. That being able to react to players is a thing. So I just want to have a different feel. Now, Guardians in this game are a little bit different from the way they are in Rising Sun and Blood Rage. There are fewer Guardians in any given game of Ankh. There's 3 exactly, 1 per each power level. And each one has a much stronger impact on the board. So sometimes it's not always even about. It's like in the game with the Mummy, for example, right? There's going to be more figures that don't die. So there's going to be the presence of Mummy in this particular game means that clearing people off the board is going to be harder than it is in the game without the Mummy. Game of et cetera, et cetera. Like I wanted that feel so that they feel like a template over the game, and that gives everybody a chance to get at them. So it's a different experience, right? You still get to use the cool special abilities of monsters, but everybody gets to experience them together, and there's a penalty to holding back too long. Muted, Lena.
Sorry, I keep doing that. I try not to interrupt your explanation. So I got that feeling too when I played it, that the monsters were really impactful in the game. So let's go to the next question. It's about a different choice you can make from the monsters, from Troll, from Kickstarter. Many players seem to be very focused on and concerned by the Control Monument event. Could you tell us if it's a mislead due to the first game feeling? So is it a trap to go for the monument strategy?
I don't think so. I mean, I wouldn't use mislead, but it's an element of the game, and it's a very purposeful element of the game, right? So for those of you who don't know, I mean, I encourage you, please do read the rules on Kickstarter, right? So I'm not going over all the rules because it would dominate this whole session, but the game is timed by an event track, right? And that's the tension between which actions you take and when they trigger events is a core part of the game. It's also part of the core interaction of the game. So like as you see here, between this and the first conflict, there's 3 possibilities to get monuments. Now, the way the game is designed is so that the weight of the action that you're taking right now, you always have to think, what do I want more? Do I want the monument, or do I want the or do I need the extra action right now that'll let me summon more figures or move better into the conflict, or set me up for the next event beyond this one? So I promise you, I mean, we played the game many times. We played the games where some people just ignored every monument event on the board, and yeah, that's a penalty, right? If you just say, forget it, I don't care ever about whether I trigger an event or not, yes, you're going to be penalized for that, and you're going to have a hard time winning. But you don't need to win every event, and you can even be behind. But what you have to keep track of is you have to take advantage of other areas. I need to get more board presence. Now, the other thing I wanted people to think about is when you are controlling a monument, right? You have the build monument card in the game. So like every time a conflict comes up, you can always build your own monument. You choose where to put it, you choose where to get it. So it's not just opportunity. Essentially, what these are doing is they're letting you discount follower costs off of monuments that you want to build. So if I win so they get a little better later on in the game, right? After you've built a bunch of monuments, you're like, oh, I already have 3 obelisks. I will definitely try to prioritize this because I'm next to an obelisk. I want to try to get that one because it saves me 6 followers. That's absolutely viable, right? So it's like everything's supposed to be a check and balance. That's what the game is designed around. No, you can't ignore it. You absolutely can't. But you are not going to lose the game if you don't win more than your fair share.
Okay, so moving on a little, our next question is about one of the most unique aspects of the game, I think, which is merge. So, Islington Stitches from Kickstarter asks, if at the time of merging all gods are about equally matched, I feel that the first player does not stand a chance after the others have merged. Is that your experience? You
No.
probably play the game more than anyone else
Right.
in the world.
No. Well, actually, right now my dev team has Marco and Leo have played the game with crazy amounts. So no. So like, well, so I think the assumption, the mistaken assumption there is that all gods are always equally matched at the time of merging. They're not. Somebody's going to be behind, right? So the fact that merging defaults down to the lowest player does matter, right? Now, it's true that if you manage a game where everybody's like really close, yeah, that's going to be a big advantage for the merged player. That rarely happens. There are so many avenues in this game for you to take advantage of big bursts of devotion that there's a degree of mind. If you play really badly, you're going to lose. That's true, right? I mean, the game is the game. It is a strategy game, right? And hopefully there's room to learn and grow. But when we play, we played the game several times, and I try not to play all the time. I try to let other people play, so I'm not dictating strategy, and I can see if this comes up naturally. Games where the merge players do get a power boost, and so you end up with a cadence of kind of like this, right? Right, this player's ahead, this player's ahead, this player's ahead, and like, oh, we're getting a little farther ahead, a little farther ahead, a little farther ahead. But it's also based on, remember that the gods, they consolidate into one, so you don't get double the Ankh powers, you don't get double anything else. You default to one of the two merged gods. When you get really subtle, right, there's some really delicious subtle pieces of the game. If I'm a merge player, I can actually semi-collude with, without the player's knowledge, I can affect what order the players merge in by, like, say, I might throw a battle to the lowest devotion player so they can get devotion and get ahead of the player I don't want to be the dominant player because they have a set of Ankh powers that's better against me at this time, right? That's a deep learning curve thing, but I've seen people figure that out even after the second game. So there's just a lot of stuff to think about. Yeah, you're right. It is a power boost, and it's a power boost for the two lowest gods. The two lowest gods. The game is because the game is engine-y, right? There's a lot of momentum in the game. I build resources. I build follower engines, so let me buy more Ankh powers. That let me get better at building more followers. The game needs that. It needs a catch up for the people that fall behind. And the merge thing works really well for that. So if you fall behind, you can use a little bit of extra actions to push you over the edge. I've seen games where merge players win, games where merge players don't win, games where merge players get eliminated because they're still stuck in the red at the time. So not only do you have to have a plan to overtake the final player, you have to get out of the red quickly, which sometimes requires you to make some sacrifices long term. Muted.
Every time. That's incredible. So how about we go a little bit off script here and answer a question from the comments.
I love off script.
So Troy Gessler asked, who is your favorite god to play as and what is your favorite guardian? That's a little more personal, a little less.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I mean, I hate copping out on answers, right? Like, I love all the gods, but like, I go through phases.
I love all my children equally.
Oh no, I don't. No, that's not true. That's not true. So I go through phases, right? So the god, I designed the gods to be a reflection of, like, to give to a thematic nod and reflection of what they were like in the mythology, and also to give them a unique play pattern. So I go through phases. Like there were points where I liked the moon. The control player in me really likes the moon. I like to pick a point where I get to play two cards, and I make it really hard for people to mind game against me. I love. I mean, this is going to be. I'm a cat person, as anybody who knows me in real life knows. So the opportunity to make Bastet and her cat tokens. And actually, when you play her and like when somebody reveals a cat token, I get to go meow, is super fun for me. I'm not great at playing her. My developer Marco is way better at playing her, but I just have super fun with it. In the core box, I think Osiris suits my playstyle a little better because I'm pretty good at picking the battles I can lose. and the power boost of being able to summon. I've gotten pretty good at placing my. There's two skills: picking which battles to lose and picking which areas I want to put my underworld tokens. I've gotten pretty good at that, so I usually feel clever when I'm playing Osiris. Oh, and Guardians. So I enjoy games that have APEP in them because APEP. Where are you, my buddy? Look at him, so cute. So when APEP's in the game, right? Like APEP changes so much of the region math of the game. Like APEP being here, combining APEP with camels, I can just add power to so many different regions and make it so hard for somebody to figure out way far ahead of time. All right, I'm going to win this region. I'm not going to win this region. Like, nope, APEP. Here I am. He's somewhat analogous to the sea serpent in Blood Rage, but in this game, the context just makes him so much different, right? He doesn't add a huge amount of power. He just adds one strength like everybody else, but he just really messes everybody up. And the fact that everybody can have, that everybody has access to him in theory, well, not really, two people have access to him, means that combat becomes a lot less, a lot more dynamic. And so the ability to win a combat in a game with APEP is slightly lower. So you might want to think, like in a game with APEP, if too many people picking Mighty and Glorious is probably a mistake, which I like. I like the fact that these monsters affect the choices that people make overall.
Okay, and now a second question I can see in the comments that is quite interesting. Eduardo Guerra asks, who gets the first monster has more chances to get the second or the third? Like, do the guardians tend to be concentrated in one player and the other one has all the monuments or things like that?
It's entirely player controlled, honestly. So we don't. So I built this game to be as interactive as possible between players, right? So there isn't, at least according to the test we have, there isn't an obvious script to follow. You have to be reactive to other players. So it's about who prioritizes. So I have played games where Guardians float towards the same set of players because those players prioritize getting Ankh tokens. They get an advantage, but the ones that do it too fast, and we destroy them in conflicts because they have no followers to play with. Like no monuments for you, and whoop, I guess you're plagued, right? So those are real decisions that you have to make. Generally, I find that sometimes monsters are taken strategically. All right, I know in a few turns I can beat you and you to that, so I need to get one. Or they're taken opportunistically, right? Like, oh, everybody's avoiding setting me up for a. Everybody's trying to avoid setting me up for the next event. So, all right, I'll just unlock Ankh, and I'll just get that monster before you did. So I've seen everything around the spectrum. Now, I know that sometimes games like this can be subject to groupthink, right? One player does an action, so everybody else tries to copy them, right? And so or one person makes a realization about the game, and all players sort of follow that. Like with Blood Rage and Rising Sun, this game does not reward groupthink. If you just copy the last player's actions, you're going to be behind them. You generally, to do well, you want to get ahead and you want to exploit something that they haven't been exploiting.
Okay, so now for a different theme, a little bit, I guess. Ciaran McCabe? I'll just mispronounce every name. I'm okay with that by now. Asks about the Plague of Locusts battle card and how it adds a very fun bluffing mechanic to combat. Can you please talk us through and clarify how this cards work?
Oh yeah, sure, of course. So yeah, yeah. So Plague is the exception to the rule, right? Is the exception to the combat card rule. Normally, combat cards they're all revealed at the same time. Sorry, they all resolve at the same time, or at worst in reverse devotion order, right? But Plague actually creates this mini window inside a particular battle that players always have to consider. So the way that Plague works exactly, right? You play the card before anything else resolves, before any other combat card resolves, Everybody picks up all their followers, and then they secretly bid a number of followers they want to lose. Everybody will lose all the followers they bid. Then you reveal. Whoever reveals the most followers is immune to plague. Everybody else sacrifices all their warriors. So all their they're all gone. Now, the thing about plague, right, is again, it's part of the it's part of the I made a mistake. It's figures, not warriors. So you actually lose everybody except your god. Now, it gives you a bigger consideration, right? There's one of the things I love about the game. It's you look at the map, you say, all right, I see some figures here, but it's not only always about the figures on the map. The figures on the map are they give you a very strong indication of who's going to win, if that's your priority. But you also have to look at their followers. Is somebody willing to sacrifice followers to actually take this combat away from me? Where's their god placed? It makes it, the card plague also makes a difference between where's my god, where's not, because they can die. They cannot die. So wherever the god is, you know, oh, this god's immune to plague. So even if they play plague and they lose, they're going to have presence there, right? So that kind of also conjures up the ability, like the god himself is coming in and bringing a plague of locusts. That's part of what I love about that. So yeah, it's not only about bluffing whether I'm going to win or not. It's about what is winning this particular battle worth to every single player. Evaluating that, and then playing it out. It's a nice break from the deterministic outcome of every other card. Oh, you're muted. Almost.
Almost. It's been a while since last happened. So our next question, I can see that it's showing up a lot in the comment section as well. It's about the two-player game. How does it work? How is it different? How does the merging work, if at all? So,
so it doesn't.
Quentin Parker in Facebook.
Absolutely. So yeah. So I mean, the first obvious one is it doesn't, and we even printed that here on the board, right? Merge only happens with, sorry, I can't see my finger here. Merge only happens with 3 or more players, for hopefully obvious reasons, right? The game doesn't just turn into a co-op. So 2-player in this, and I know this comes up a lot in area control games and R games, all types in this genre. 2-player has a different feel, right? Because there's less of a chaotic element. In this game, it's going to be even more different because of the way the scenarios work. And 2-player was actually one of the big inspirations for fleshing out scenarios to be more than just board setups. So I'm going to talk to you less about mechanics. You know all the mechanics of the game. The mechanics of the game don't change except for the scenario itself. So what the 2-player, the low player counts was 2 or 3. They allow us to make scenarios that actually have a little bit more of a questing feel, because in a 2-player game, you only have one opponent. So everything I do, there's one player opposing that, which means that I can there can be more dynamic elements of the board for you to interact with. And you'll notice that among the lower player counts. So as I said, we recommend the basic scenarios to start with, just to get you familiar with the game, the Middle Kingdom or the Old Kingdom scenarios that have no extra rules. But try like 2 cities, which is the one that we put, the 2 capitals, which is the one we put up there. I don't want to be careful not to overpromise you, but there are 3 other scenarios I know that are on in development that are really good for, one that's only good for 2 players, and one that's good for 2 and 3. And they all have that feel of 2 capitals. There's just more stuff happening. So there's more ways for the board itself to interfere with you. So you'll still get that feeling of there's a bunch of stuff on the board to interact with, but you only have one opponent. So yeah, it will have a different feel of the game. It'll the people who really enjoy the chessy aspect of games, where like I just want to play against one other opponent, might enjoy 2-player even more than multiplayer. I would just want to make sure that absolutely sure in this game that it's viable. And so for the most part, it's going to be scenarios. So check out the 2 capitals scenario. I want to warn everybody that there's still a development pass that has to be done over it. I revealed it a little bit before we finished every last aspect of it, so the balance might be off a tiny bit. We're still working on this game. Don't worry, for like at least a few months after the Kickstarter. Just like Rising Sun, Blood Rage, we work everything out to balance it out to our satisfaction. But that's the short answer, right? It's going to feel different because we got to put scenarios in there that really get to optimize that count, and that's going to be the feel. No merging.
Okay. No merging, yeah, it figures, because otherwise it would become a co-op game against the board.
Right.
Okay, so for the next question, can you talk about the gaming styles of the available gods? There are some more aggressive, more political, more conservative, and so on?
Sure. I mean, I don't know if I don't think I'd couch it in those terms, but the way that the way the gods were designed were to encourage long-term, medium-term, and short-term thought, an approach to the game, and to affect how the opponents play. That's important, right? So, right, Osiris should hopefully obvious, right? It's literally about using conflicts themselves as a currency, right? So I'm going to choose a conflict and go, all right, this is the one I'm going to lose, but I'm going to lose it if you're playing really well. That's the higher end of the learning curve. I'm going to try to make my opponents waste as many resources to making me lose as possible, even though I'm going to lose. And then I'm just going to take advantage of that later. Now, you need to, you need to win some and lose some. And it's not just win. It's if you just lose all conflicts at the beginning of the game to win the later ones. No, you got to win some conflicts all the time, right? So pick which ones you're going to lose, and then get better at the later on. Ra is for players that really enjoy high stakes play. So Ra has a power that it looks obvious, but it's actually a little subtle, right? Like that you get to make radiant figures and telegraph to all the players what regions you want. And that has an effect, the specific effect. You can go, I'm declaring this is mine. I'm going to put all my effort into here. Stay out of here, as an intimidation tactic or as a bluffing tactic, right? If I spread out all my guys, then who knows? Maybe I'm trying to win all the battles. I can't. If I gang them all up into one, maybe I'm making that declaration, or maybe I'm trying to get you to overcommit to winning this conflict, and I'm actually fine with it. I'm going to miracle out of it. You get your radiant tokens back if you lose. So it's just cool. It lets you really play your opponents a little bit. Amun, of course, as I mentioned before, right? Amun is just for people who really master the mind games of the actual cards themselves, or on the other hand, for people who just go, you know what? I don't want to pick this time. I want both of these cards. Boom, take them both. The Amun basically is the only god I think in the core set that definitely kind of plays the same short, medium, and long-term game. His power is so concentrated on the conflicts. He's fairly straightforward to get into, but not straightforward to play well. I recommend him for a lot of beginning players. The other one I recommend for beginning players, even though he has a lot of subtlety to it eventually, is of course Anubis. If you enjoy games where you just passively collect power as time goes on, like people die in combat, like, all right, I'm going to get stronger and stronger and stronger, yes, then you definitely just want to play Anubis. You don't have to track anything. You just have to, at the time people die, you just grab them, you put them in the underworld. Now, the subtle part of Anubis is that people can summon their warriors away from the underworld by giving you followers. So if you want to play them really well, you choose people that have either a deficit in followers or people that have, if you're like, all right, I'm actually going to use the underworld as a follower engine and just take stuff from warriors from people I know can take them away, can give them back to me, right? And so you can use it as a way to supplement your follower income, as it were. A last point, of course, remember, he has a slight drawback in the sense that other players can choose to take your warriors away. Make sure that you are not 100% counting on that extra power boost too far ahead of a conflict, right? And finally, Isis, of course. Isis is great and all about timing. Isis is like, you know what? I don't care if I lose this conflict because I'm not going to die. That's great, but you still have to win some conflicts to get devotion. But Isis is really good at being able to play other cards, other non-conflict based cards. So I can just flood or I can build monuments and not have to worry about losing presence on the board. Now, that sounds really cool, and it is really cool. But remember that there's a ceiling to our power. Once you got all your warriors on the board, well, then what? Then you're not actually saving anything. So it's and of course players have to you force players to play around you by getting away from you before a conflict starts. So more than any other god, ISIS has to keep very careful track of the timing of conflict events. So that's the core box. I mean, there's I can talk forever about all the other gods, but we'll stick to the core for now. The key to this is I want to make sure that gods are not just about this is how you win devotion, this is how you win the game. This is how these are the elements of the game that are augmented for you, or that you get to ignore, or that you get to exploit in different ways.
Okay. So we're running out of time. It's been over an hour. So I will pick one last question from the comment section, and we can then say goodbye to Eric and to our viewers. So from Julian Baby, if I unlock a level 2 garden, but there is no more, can I get a level 1 garden if it's still available?
You may not. Yeah, we did play both versions of that, but it was really easy to forget, and we wanted to make sure that there's a penalty. Like I said, there's a penalty to being last to unlock your Ankh power, and no, you cannot. That's a short answer. You cannot. Once you're on level 2, you concentrate on level 2. That means that means again you're choosing to be reactive and concentrate on other parts of the game, or jump ahead and get them. And of course, normally there are fewer guardians of level 2 and level 3, so that even more so. Now, I want to point out one thing. Unlike Blood Rage and Rising Sun, they both those games shared a mechanic, and whenever you gain a monster, it immediately goes into play. That was to offset some of the cost of taking the monster card. In this game, that's not true. Once you get a monster, it goes into your pool. You still have to use a summon action to put them into play. So it gives you access to that monster, but you still have to use them. It's subtle, but it's part of the design. You're muted. Helena?
Of course, I couldn't end without forgetting to unmute my mic. Right?
Imagine that everything you said was brilliant.
Yes, you know what? It was. I was just thanking you for your time and for illuminating us on so many aspects of the game, and I'm sure that helps everyone who watched to have a more clear understanding of the gameplay and what choices are involved. And as you know, the Kickstarter is still running for a week. So if you found that interesting, please go and take a look.
I think it's safe to say that we still have a few surprises in store for them too.
Yes, be sure the week's a long time, and there is a lot to come. So thank you all for watching, and thank you, Eric.
Thanks, everyone. I'm glad to be able to do this in these challenging times.
Thank you all. Goodbye.
Bye, everyone.